Imagine looking up at the sky and seeing it rain fire. Over 5,000 bombs have already fallen, a literal downpour from hell that has erased 1,300 souls from the earth. That staggering toll includes 8 American soldiers who gave everything in the heat of combat. You are hearing me right. The skies above the Middle East are burning brighter and fiercer than anything we have seen in decades. The sheer volume of airstrikes is double what we witnessed during Operation Shock and Awe back in 2003. We are not talking about a localized feud anymore. This is a sweeping storm of steel that is rewriting the map of the world while crude oil prices inch dangerously close to $120 a barrel. The whole planet is holding its breath, staring at the fatal misstep that lit the match. Who poked the bear? What irreversible choice unleashed the immense, unstoppable war machines of the US and Israel, forcing them to obliterate every obstacle in their path? And what kind of cutting-edge tech is reducing Tehran to a smoking crater of ash? Grab a seat and settle in for this 30-minute deep dive, because we are breaking down the absolute devastation of Operation Epic Fury. Do not look away. Every single second right now is making history. Before we get deep into it, drop a comment and tell me what country you are tuning in from. Alright, let us get into it. Right at the start of March 2026, a cold wave of dread washed over the globe. Decades of handshakes and treaties just vanished into thin air overnight. The entire Middle East, from the rich soil of the Levant down to the choppy waters of the Red Sea, morphed into a colossal battlefield. We are way past minor border scuffles now. This is a brutal, all-out war where technology and sheer grit are being measured in blood. It all popped off at once, like the most terrifying set of dominoes you could ever imagine. Up north, Hezbollah forces in Lebanon made the gravest error of their existence by launching thousands of rockets into Israeli territory. Tel Aviv did not just flinch, they brought down a biblical level of punishment. The Israeli military did not stop at dropping bombs from the sky. They sent armored divisions tearing across the border, setting southern Lebanon completely ablaze. The immediate aftermath was staggering. More than 400 fighters and civilians lost their lives in just the first 48 hours. 500,000 people were forced to flee, creating a desperate wave of humanity running from the deafening roar of F-35 fighter jets. But hold on, because that was just the opening act. Down in Yemen, Houthi fighters declared the Red Sea an absolute dead zone for any ship with Western ties. At the exact same time, Shia militias over in Iraq started hammering American bases with a relentless barrage of mortars and suicide drones, staring down the #1 superpower on Earth without blinking. Iran and its axis of resistance thought they could trap Israel in a massive, multi-directional chokehold. But they seriously miscalculated. When you back the combined military beast of the US and Israel into a corner, that alliance is going to wake up and crush anything standing in its path. The absolute center of this inferno shifted straight to the main players. Tehran and the Isfahan province are taking pounding after pounding from terrifyingly heavy airstrikes. On the flip side, major hubs like Tel Aviv and Haifa are bracing against showers of incoming ballistic missiles. The battlefield is now everywhere. Every single spot on the map could become a final resting place for the arrogant. It feels like the opening scene of a doomsday nobody saw coming. History always shows us that the line between being a brilliant strategist and a reckless gambler is incredibly thin. In March 2026, Iran crossed a line they can never walk back from. Their biggest mistake was not just swinging at Israel. It was their greedy attempt to choke the life out of the global economy. When you mess with the money of the entire world, you are no longer fighting one country. You are declaring war on all of human civilization. Their wildest move was turning the Strait of Hormuz into a weapon. Tehran announced they were blocking that vital artery, which handles 20% of the oil moving around the planet. They even had the nerve to try and slap a security tax on every Western cargo ship trying to pass. They sent a chilling message, saying not a single drop of oil would flow as long as they were under attack. It was the biggest extortion scheme the world had ever seen, and it instantly turned their potential allies into bitter enemies. And they just kept digging the hole deeper. Iran completely isolated themselves by dragging the nations next door into the firestorm. Instead of keeping the fight strictly between themselves and their main rivals, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps started letting missiles fly at American bases located inside Arab countries. The fallout was immediate. An oil refinery in Bahrain went up in a massive fireball. The UAE got slammed by a coordinated barrage of 15 ballistic missiles and 18 suicide drones. They even violated the airspace of Turkey without a second thought. This wild, unchecked aggression did something nobody thought possible. It forced the West and the Arab states to lock arms and form a historic military alliance to stop the Iranian push. On the technology side of things, Iran decided to crank the destruction up to a whole new level. They ditched the light weapons and went all in on massive swarm tactics, strapping warheads that weigh over 1 ton onto their gear. Names like Qadr, Ahmad, and Kbar Shirkan started dominating the news, acting as literal messengers of doom. With the ability to fly 2,000 kilometers and hit with terrifying accuracy, Iran actually thought they could level any target. But they forgot a fundamental rule of warfare. When you raise the stakes by breaking out the massive weapons, your enemy is going to hit back 10 times harder. Tehran planted the seeds of a storm, and now they are staring down a hurricane they cannot stop. Welcome to the brutal new age of digital war, where cheap flying lawnmowers are challenging billion-dollar masterpieces of engineering. Iran is not trying to be fancy here. They are relying on the sheer, ugly brutality of massive numbers, turning the sky into a nightmare for the most advanced radar systems on Earth. Just look at the math. Iran unleashed hundreds of Shahid drones that cost next to nothing, somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 apiece. That is less than you would pay for a luxury car. But when you launch 100 to 200 of them at the exact same time, and mix in cruise missiles flying practically on the dirt to hide from radar, you create a deadly puzzle for the people trying to shoot them down. Radar screens across Israel and the US suddenly lit up with thousands of incoming threats, creating a massive overload of information. And here is the sick irony of it all, an economic equation written in blood. To stop a cheap drone flying as slow as a motorcycle, Western forces have to launch incredibly sophisticated interceptors. A single Patriot PAC-3 missile costs anywhere from $2 million to $4 million. Do the math on that. The US and its allies are burning through millions just to swat down a piece of junk worth 1/80th of that price. This is not just combat. It is an open financial bleeding out on the live battlefield. Iran never really cared about hitting targets with those drones. Their real goal was to drain the enemy's stockpile of expensive interceptor missiles. The plan was simple. Wait until the defense grids run out of ammo or get totally overwhelmed chasing garbage targets, and then drop the decisive blow. That is when they send in a medium-range ballistic missiles packed with massive explosives, slipping them right through the exposed defense gaps. It is a cunning strategy, using tiny, cheap things to break massive, expensive things, turning million-dollar defense systems into clumsy giants trying to swat flies with solid gold sledgehammers. But if Iran honestly believed they could use quantity to crush quality, they were miserably mistaken. The second those first waves of drones and missiles entered the airspace, the US and Israeli alliance activated a massive, multi-layered defense network, turning the Middle Eastern sky into an unbelievable display of precision firepower. Over in Tel Aviv and central Israel, the Iron Dome and David's Sling systems operated at full absolute capacity. The scream of interceptor missiles ripping into the stratosphere created glowing fireballs high up in the sky, turning the incoming barrage into trivial scraps of metal before they could even reach their targets. And this was not just a solo fight. We watched the rise of an unprecedented global alliance. Over in Turkey, NATO defense grids immediately opened fire, swatting Iranian long-range ballistic missiles right out of the sky the second they left their initial trajectory. This flawless teamwork handed Tehran a brutal reality check. The rest of the world was not going to stand by and watch them destroy the existing order. Even Arab nations like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait threw their neutrality out the window. Their defense networks fired non-stop to protect vital oil fields and U.S. military bases from the endless swarms of cheap drones. The most incredible highlight was watching expeditionary forces arrive from across the ocean. Australia did not hesitate. They deployed their absolute early warning masterpiece, the E-7A Wedgetail, straight to the UE along with fighter squadrons loaded with the most advanced air-to-air missiles. Flying miles above the Earth, that E-7A Wedgetail acted like a divine eye in the sky, helping Allied jets hunt down and vaporize targets from hundreds of kilometers away. No matter how many secret trump cards Iran tried to pull, this massive, interconnected web of intelligence and defense saw it coming. This synergy was not just about blocking punches. It was an absolute message of deterrence. Every single time the alliance fired a missile, they were affirming that the technological might of the West is a barrier no swarm can cross. Tehran decided to test the patience of the entire world, and the world answered them with cold steel and high-tech explosives. When the patience of superpowers hits rock bottom, the gates of hell swing wide open. The US and Israeli alliance officially kicked off Operation Epic Fury. Do not confuse this with a standard retaliation. This is a systematic annihilation aimed directly at the central nervous system of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Every single military facility and underground command center was put on a kill list inside ultra-sensitive computers. The tactics this time around are so sophisticated they are ruthless. Instead of wasting bombs blowing up the surface, American and Israeli pilots dropped the newest generation of self-guided bunker-buster bombs. Their objective was simple and devastating. They collapsed the heavy doors of those underground tunnel networks right at the exact moment the Iranian missile launchers were trying to roll out. Picture hundreds of massive ballistic missiles permanently neutralized in their infancy, turning the most fortified underground bases into mass graves full of unexploded bombs. But the true star of this operation is a brand new assassin making its debut. The Lucas Suicide UAV. This is the definitive American answer to Iranian swarm tactics. Coming in at a price of just $35,000, the Lucas is not just cheap, it is incredibly intelligent. Guided constantly by satellite communication, these tiny monsters can loiter high above Iranian skies for hundreds of kilometers, silently hunting down mobile launch trucks and blowing them to pieces before the crew even realizes death is present. It is a high-tech hunt where the predator can eliminate the prey from a position of absolute safety. And the reach of this alliance goes all the way out to distant seas. In a shocking development, a U.S. nuclear submarine quietly slipped a torpedo into the water and sank a major Iranian warship right off the coast of Sri Lanka. The message sent is crystal clear and highly deterrent. There is not a single coordinate on this planet where you are safe if you dare to challenge the might of this alliance. Operation Epic Fury is not just a military move. It is a brutal demonstration that when cutting-edge technology mixes with iron determination, absolute destruction is the only outcome for the enemy. The price of arrogance and miscalculation is always measured in cold numbers on the front pages. By March 2026, Operation Epic Fury had left a permanent scar on the Middle East. Over 1,255 Iranians have perished under the heat of smart munitions, while the United States is mourning the painful loss of 8 fallen soldiers. War by its very nature has no mercy, and target identification errors under immense battlefield pressure have led to horrific civilian tragedies. A prime example is the heartbreaking incident where a girls' school in Iran was struck by straight fire. It is a tragic testament that once the massive war machine starts moving, unintended losses are an unavoidable scenario. While the smoke was choking the sky, a massive political earthquake shook the very heart of power in Tehran. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei breathed his last breath. Without missing a beat, the Iranian Assembly of Experts immediately handed the reins to his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, naming him the new supreme leader. This was not a peaceful transition of power. It was a steel-clad message sent straight to the West, declaring that Tehran will never kneel. A new dynasty, far more radical and hard-lined, is strapping in for a fight to the finish, promising to drag this conflict out into an endless confrontation between two wills of iron. Meanwhile, up on the northern front, Lebanon is teetering on the brink of total collapse. Feeling the suffocating weight of the Israeli military, the Lebanese government finally woke up and realized they can no longer be hostages to the ambitions of other people. A wave of internal turmoil erupted. The government stepped up, officially banning all Hezbollah military activities from its territory and urgently begging for ceasefire negotiations with Israel just to save their country from total annihilation. The cracks in that axis of resistance are beginning to show, simply because the price of challenging the absolute power of the US and Israeli alliance has become way too expensive to bear. When the guns fired in the Middle East, the world did not just see flames. It saw a looming financial nightmare. In just a few short days in March 2026, global crude oil prices danced frantically, at times surging dangerously close to that terrifying mark of $120 a barrel. That is not just a number on a screen. It is a death sentence for global economic stability. In the Persian Gulf region, the biggest maritime insurance organizations on Earth simultaneously made an unprecedented decision, pulling all risk insurance for any transport vessels passing through those waters. No insurance means the energy flow is frozen, and the price we all pay is pure chaos. The domino effect began to crush the most fragile economies first. Over in the Philippines, the government had to issue an emergency decree forcing a 4-day work week for all state agencies just to save every precious drop of food. Meanwhile, in Bangladesh, the situation was many times worse. The nation was forced to lock the doors on all universities and roll out massive, large-scale rolling blackouts just to avoid a total energy and fuel collapse. Innocent people living thousands of kilometers away from the battlefield are suffering the consequences of the missteps made in war. This is the brutal reality of the modern world. A conflict at a strategic strait can turn the lives of billions into a little war. When Iran threatened to block economic arteries, they did not just attack its opponents. They were manually strangling the entire world. The absolute military power of the US and Israeli alliance is striving to restore order, but the economic wounds left by this war will continue to bleed for years to come. The conflict between the US and Israeli alliance and Iran in March 2026 is not just a bloody chapter in history. It is a milestone that is completely redefining the face of modern warfare. We just witnessed a breathtaking confrontation between the most advanced technology on the planet and cunningly attritional sworn tactics. Operation Epic Fury went down as follows, Part 2. It does not matter how many cheap drones or ballistic missiles you possess. They become irreversible threats of multi-layered defense networks and retaliatory strikes that are precise down to the center. Furthermore, the world just realized the ridiculous fragility of our global energy supply chains when faced with geopolitical risks. The recipe remains the In this era, war has no absolute winner, but there are certainly pathetic losers. Provoking the world and threatening to block economic or pushing oil prices to $120 is not a strategic massive threat. It is an act of sheer suicide that only brings destructive devastation down on your own head while plunging millions of innocent civilians into misery. What do you think about Iranian swarm tactics going up against the brand new American Lucas assassin drones? Will this war end quickly like President Trump planned, or is this just the beginning of a decades-long geopolitical restructuring? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you for staying with us throughout this 30-minute in-depth analysis today. Do not forget to hit like, share, and subscribe to support our military content production team. Goodbye, and I will see you out there on the next operation. Real power is not about how much you can blow up, it is about having the brains to not make yourself the target of